And we're back, Stripe Show podcast on a Tuesday. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for tuning in. Tuesday means one thing. It's time to look ahead. And this week, it's the AT&T Byron Nelson down in Dallas, McKinney, Texas. That's northeast of Dallas at a place called TPC Craig Grant. But before we get to that, and we give you our thoughts and our bets, we're going to welcome back our guest from last week. It's only fitting because, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching the podcast last week, you hit 75-1. The guy that kept us all on it joins me again here today, Keith Stewart. Welcome back. Thank you, sir.
You know, Travis, I love your shows because you're always looking ahead at the game, the coaching, every aspect of what's going on, the culture of golf. But don't mind me if I want to take a quick look back, right? You know, Sunday was a good day, my friend.
The floor is yours.
I really enjoyed the show last week with you. And I mean, hey, Tiger's still excited behind me about it. It was a good week. It was a good week. Yeah,
it was a good week. And I went back, I watched the show as I always do. And I thought we really, we had it nailed because I was convincing you in the beginning that it was a Xander week. It just felt like a Xander week. And you were kind of challenging me. And I'm like, God, no Scotty, no Rahm. Homo will make a run. You know that. There'll be a couple, but it just felt like Xander was ready to, go up there, grab the lead. He did. But then fast forward in the show, and you kind of stopped the show literally and said, look, you were on Wyndham last week. We need to get on him again this week. You know what the only difference is? His odds. He's still hitting it great. He's ready to do this. Quail's a great spot for him. And it just hit home. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And my wallet is better for it. So I thank you for these. I thank you for the cash that came in after that hit. So yeah, it was just sometimes you get it right. And last week was a great week, and we'll look to do it again this week. And I know you're not on site this week as you were last. You're actually at the LPGA event. That's right, right up in the Northeast.
Yes, the Cognizant Founders Cup. It's an event that's kind of moved around a little bit, but the last 3 years it's been here in New Jersey. So it's an away game, always covering golf, but it's a home game because I'm in my home state of New Jersey, so I get to sleep in my own bed. But I'm excited because this golf course I've played a ton of professional events in, section-wise here with the New Jersey PGA. So I know the golf course very well. It's a Tillinghast. It's just a really great design. 27 holes. They take the best 18. 7 tee shots meander one way, 7 go the other way. Minjee Lee, she tore it up last year, 22 birdies and 2 eagles, but she only shot 19 under. So it will be a birdie fest because these ladies are that good, much like it will be down there in McKinney. But I get excited about covering the LPGA every week because plus 7,500 for the LPGA pays the same amount of money as plus 7,500 does for the PGA Tour. A lot of people haven't made that connection yet, but week in and week out, I cover both tours because I love winning. And I'm happy to be here at Upper Montclair Country Club. And I'm actually sitting in the head pro's office. He has a mural behind him of Tiger making the putt on the 72nd hole at Torrey Pines. And he said, well, if you're going on Travis's show, I love Travis's show. Big shout out to Mike Holliday, who's the director of golf here, PGA member and friend of mine. And he said, you got to come in here and show off my office. So
all right,
that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Well, I love it. So Keith joining me here again today. You can see the Read the Line. Go check it out at Read the Line, his picks. If you're not following him, you're missing out, folks. I'm bringing the best here to the podcast. So now it's up to you. That Tiger picture there, it kind of gets us started here with this tournament, the AT&T Byron Nelson. It takes me back to my youth when Tiger won the Byron Nelson at a place called TPC Las Colinas, which I really like. That was an awesome place. And it was back in 1997. Now, my sister lived in the Dallas area for many years. And so when I was in my youth, growing up in the Northwest, she's older than I am, we would go down there and we would either go to the Byron Nelson or the Colonial. And most of the time it was the Byron. So I was there in 97, Tiger Mania, when this thing was getting kicked off. And let me tell you something. That tournament, I was always big into golf, but that tournament, man, if you were there, it absolutely just filled you up with energy around the game of golf. It was contagious. Tiger was front and center, getting things started. I'll never forget that as long as I live. This tournament is rich in history. It's moved around a little bit. Byron Nelson, of course, one of the greats. But man, that Tiger event in 97, that win was something else.
I think you bring up a great point, just from a golf perspective. I mean, two of the most popular golfers of the last 30 years made their debut there, right? Mm-hmm. Jordan did it as a high school player. So you look at Jordan Spieth and Tiger Woods, there's mm-hmm. no two bigger names in the game. And it's a shame that Jordan is injured. And, we spoke briefly about Jordan last week. I was touting Jordan. I love Jordan. I saw Greller after round 2, and I kind of looked at him, and he gave me a sign like, Keith, no good. And I was like, all right, well, did he have a bad steak? What was the story? But obviously the story's come out now. It's a shame not to see him there. But you know what? The Byron Nelson has introduced us to these two amazing generational talents.
Yep, they sure have. And it is disappointing. Of course, no Spieth, as he's talking about. He's got the wrist injury, and I just hate to hear that. When you get a lot of pain in the wrist, whew, man, that's going to be difficult. You start looking ahead, PGA Championship next week. Can he complete the career Grand Slam? We'll have to wait and see. But for this week, he will not be there. Scotty Scheffler, former Texan, is there. We'll get to the odds here in a second. Of course, Scheffler in the field. He will be the overwhelming favorite here. But let's talk about the golf course real quick. TPC Craig Ranch. I was there years ago. I can remember when they built this place when I was running the PGA Tour Academies. We had a road show, and we actually made our way into TPC Craig Ranch right when it was opening. And there was nothing around there in McKinney. Now I think it's a little more built out, but it is a pretty easy track. I remember playing it. I'm nowhere near the players these guys are, but I got to thinking, like, this course feels, pretty much right in front of you. I mean, you look at it off the tee. These guys are going to be bombing it off the tee. They're going to be hitting fairways. These are big greens. They're going to be hitting greens. Proximity is going to be probably even a little tighter here than when you compare it to tour average. I think it's pretty straightforward around the greens as far as getting it up and down. There's not going to be a lot of 3 putts. I mean, you go back to the last 2 years, KH Lee, of course, has won back-to-back 26 under and 25. You better pin yours back here, and you better go low.
Well, at Travis, the PGA Tour, they've corrected all the scoring problems. They've taken the 12th hole and they made it a par 4 instead of a par 5. So the winner would probably only be 24 under now, I mean, the same guy, TPC Lee, I love to call him. He's 51 under par in 2 years on this golf course. And the beauty of this event, in my mind, and what we're going to talk about today, was that he was 20,000 plus 20,000 the first year he won. Mm-hmm. And you would have thought, well, geez, now he's on the radar. The second year he was plus 10,000. He still wasn't even on the radar, right? And he's won back-to-back years. So this place is, if you can get the putter hot, 6th widest fairways on tour. So it's just like reel back and let it rip. And if you can get the putter hot, pretty good sized greens, almost 7,000 square feet. So proximity, all these things, but birdie or better, that's got to be your number one stat line this week.
Yep. 51 under par. Wow. Over the last,
think about that.
That is absurd. Yeah. It's a par 71 this year, as you mentioned, just under 7,500 yards. All right, let's get into it. Scheffler in the field. Speaking of a putter, let's just put it this way: if Scheffler shows up with a hot putter, the game's over, right? I mean, let's just start with that, right? If Scheffler shows up and he has a great putting week, it's over, because tee to green, there's no one better, and he opens up now plus 360. Now let's move down. Hatton 12-1, Day 14, Kim 16, and in Matsuyama 20. I'll give you the clean slate there with the short odds. What comes to mind?
I completely agree with you on Scheffler. The only guy that has the firepower, I think, to take it low multiple days that you just talked about there is Hideki. Hideki's got a chance to keep up. So if the two of them, it could be a 2-man race like it turned out down there at Wells Fargo, which I witnessed last week there on property. Hideki's really the only one there to me that's kind of proven at this point that he can continue to go super low like that. The rest of the guys there, Hatton, I'm really starting to love for next week. So much like he seemed distracted there at the Valero for the Masters, I think we're going to get a similar Hatton this week. Hatton has been really good on tough golf courses. So I'm loving me a little temper up where it's going to be a little cold next week. Jay Day, still, I listened to Jason Day in the press conference room last week, and he admitted to having vertigo when he was 3 up on Scotty. He admitted to having vertigo in the final round at the Masters. So at this low of a number, if it was Jay Day and it was a different type of field and he was way down the board, then sure, it's worth a flyer. But he's still working on his vertigo.
Yeah.
And how medically he's going to treat it. So at 17-1, that's just not a good idea. And Tom Kim, jury's still out on Tom Kim. He was great in Vegas and also at Wyndham at kind of other birdie fests. But the length here, to me, makes me just want to lead in that group you just talked about towards Hideki for all the right reasons.
I'll push back on Hatton a little. I think he's got the game here, and the power here. You just feel like he's going to be a little distracted. I mean, he's got the approach. He's going to give himself a lot of opportunities. He checks out in how many birdies he makes. You think he's just going to be maybe looking ahead, perhaps, to PGA?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And
right.
He's a great putter, and I think a good putter is what it takes to win there. Now you can get hot as a putter, but when you look at the greens there. Unlike last week, where if you're a great putter at a place like Quail or Augusta National, it's almost mitigated your skill against separating yourself from the field. This place is pretty flat. So if you're a great putter and you can make some putts in that 10 to 15 foot range, then granted, I think you could separate yourself. And that's what Scotty or that's what Jordan tend to do, right? Hatton also a good putter. So yeah, I agree with you. I just think he's looking ahead. Personal sentiment there.
It's interesting. When I was at the Golf Channel and Hatton was on the European Tour at the time, and I can remember when he was coming up and like his strength was putting. He was the best putter on the European Tour. And then as he came over here and he started playing more, like you saw other parts of his game starting to come together. And I think he's a more complete player now. And you look at him, it's like you're almost waiting for that big putting week to happen, because if it does, then the rest of it, I think, is there to perhaps keep up with Scheffler. I think of all the short odds, I think I would probably circle Hatton. I mean, Tom Kim, we're just waiting for the putter to have any sort of pulse. I mean, the guy just can't make anything right now. The last 2 weeks, he's lost 3.5 and 3.1. Ball striking has been okay. But I'll probably pass on Kim. And I think in the short odds, I think it comes down to Matsuyama and Hatton. I'm going to say his head's in it just a little bit more than perhaps what you're that you're alluding to. All right, now we get down to the two-time defending champ last 2 years. KH Lee, he's at 22. Kuchar at 25. Adam Scott, 30-1. Some of those short misses. Oh, man, like there was Adam Scott and that long putter last week. Just gives me the heebie-jeebies. Siwoo Kim at 35. I'll stop at Hoagie and Power at 40. All right, you want an approach game, right? We know that approach is going to be number one here. No one's probably going to do it better than Tom Hoagie. Seamus Power will give you a little bit. But I'll be honest, anybody in that group, I can't bet KH Lee to win 3. However, he is starting to put it together. I mean, he comes in here and the game is trending pretty good. He can't win 3 in a row, can he? What is it? Only 8 guys have done it since World War II. Is that the stat I read?
Well, I mean, one of the last guys to win 3 in a row was Steve Stricker. And was Steve Stricker a world beater? I mean, if it's truly a horses for courses type place, and we are at the ranch, right? Then KH Lee has given us all signs to get, I guess, interested in what he's up to with the way he's been playing lately. You know, over his last 5 events, he's gaining almost 4 strokes against the field. And he's doing it with the putter. He's doing it with a decent driver and an above-average iron game. And he showed a little bit of that at Quail Hollow just to get us all a little bit excited for what could possibly be next. In that bracket there that you just brought up, yes, Hoagie got hot with the putter at TPC, and he does this from time to time. The approach game will be there. In that range, a year ago, I loved Adam Scott coming into this event. I liked where Adam Scott spoke to his manager last week, Tiernan. It's like Adam has been not really happy with where he's been lately. And he's been dedicating himself more over the last month or so. We're starting to see a little bit of that, Travis, and you and I as coaches, right? So you're starting to see those little glimpses of him being a lot more consistent and, the T-ball and where he's hitting his approach shots. Is he hitting his targets? He's starting to do those things. I get a little bit more in that group. I'm excited about Scott probably more than the others. Seamus Power, it's not good. I mean, he seems like the perfect guy. Both years here at TPC Craig Ranch, I think he's been in that top 30, top 20 range, I want to say, both years that they played here. So he was definitely somebody that I looked up, and then I just looked at what he's been doing lately, and it just might not be his time of year. I don't know. Maybe it's too warm wherever they're playing for an Irish guy. But at the end of the day, Scott, and, if I could throw in a little Matty Kuchar there, when you start talking about putting and short game and scoring around the greens, over the last 18 months on the PGA Tour, there's not many guys that are better.
Adam Scott's last win, Genesis, back in 2020, February of 2020. Yeah, he played very well last week. Very well last week. I just can't get those little short putts out of my mind with Adam Scott once in a while. He just all of a sudden it's a 4-footer and it's inside left and he hits it about 8,000 miles an hour and it hits the left edge. It's just like, what in the? And so, man, do I try?
Travis, let me jump in there for a second, right? Because last week we were talking about Xander, right? And we were getting into a golf discussion about how well-rounded he is and how well he fits Quail Hollow. And you hit the nail right on the head. He was there. But when it came down to it Sunday, he missed a couple short putts.
Yeah, no,
but I
true.
know I know a week from now that Xander has got to be at the top of everybody's list for a place like Oak Hill, as well-rounded as he is, if he's got the driver back in shape, which it looks like he does. You look at his results with the driver at the match play, and there's no shot link, right? So we don't really see what happened there, but, the guy made it, almost all the way to the semifinal. I mean, so I think that I like to tell people all the time, don't get too caught up on some of these short putts, Yes, Adam Scott has a long putter for a reason, but he's got a pretty good track record in Texas for some, for another reason. I think that far outweighs, in my opinion, on a golf discussion rather than maybe a couple tough putts last week on very difficult greens, which I know you know that.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair point. Adam Scott, look, he was 4.5 positive last week, 5.5 putting. Very solid week. Finished 5th at Wells Fargo. And his putter has been pretty good, really, overall, when you look at it for the better part of this year. So I think you make some really valid points. I didn't circle Adam Scott. I didn't circle anybody in this group that we just discussed for this matter, because I'm kind of leaning on some bombs this week. I'm going down the board a little bit. I'm feeling kind of feeling, a little crazy and frisk, all this money in my pocket. I feel like I need to get rid of it from last week. And so Adam Scott's interesting. You're making some very valid points there. The thing with Hoagie, though, and I have a lot of people who listen to the pod that like Tom Hoagie. I think his brother listens to the pod down in Southern Florida, and he hasn't hit the ball very good. I think in full transparency here in the last 2 weeks, he's missed the cut. So it's not exactly the same ball striking machine when it comes to Tom Hoagie as of late. So I'm probably going to pass on him, but KH Lee, I'll tell you what, you got to take a look, folks. He is trending. He clearly loves this place. I don't think it would be a surprise to see him go 3 straight. Moving on, Spawn, Montgomery, Yeager, and Brandon Wu. Adam, speaking of missing some cuts coming in, Adam had one. He's not playing very well right now. He's at 45. I think of that group: Spawn, Montgomery, Stephen Yeager, Brandon Wu, Adam Hadwin. I sprinkled a little bit on Brandon Wu. I think when I look at him in his game, approach and putting, I'm going to sign up for Brandon Wu. We've seen him run up that leaderboard. He's an impressive player. Could this be the week? I sprinkled a little on him.
For sure, Brandon Wu is the type of guy. He can make some birdies in some bunches, and he's shown that. the consistency factor of anyone in that, this group that you just brought up was much like the sentiment you just expressed with the last group. Nobody here really got me that excited. There's a couple names that you're about to mention that are just below this that get me way more excited. But, when I think of Steven Yeager, I'm thinking of a Yeager bomb, Travis. I mean, I need him up at 90 or 100 or more right now. He has proven his worth to be down around there in a field of this, stature. But I have a tough time, settling on him at, let's say, best odds right now on him are 50-1. And everyone else in that realm is just kind of Taylor Montgomery has been kind of lost since those early top 10s. JJ Spawn in Texas, if we want to say that's a theme. JJ was solid last week at Quail. He looks like he hits the ball good on the practice area. So I guess of any of them, we could have a conversation about JJ Spawn, but I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, I think I'm more excited about Dylan Wu as we move down the board.
True.
And he's at 90-1. And so, but I do at Brandon, I got him he's 45 right now. I got him at better odds than that. I did sprinkle a little there for what it's worth. Now, Bramlett, all right, you're going to get the ball striking, probably not the putting. McNeely, you're probably going to get the putting and not the ball striking. Davis Riley, always the most intriguing to me when he starts falling down the board. Obviously, he won the match play. He won the team competition at Zurich and then turns around and misses the cut at the RBC in Wells. So, where are we at with Davis Riley? I saw a fresh video of him posted by an instructor from the driving range saying, man, look how good all this looks, and so Davis Riley is one of my favorite swings out there. So where are we at with that? I'm not going to go there, but I think Riley, to me, has that high ceiling. Stallings at 55. Michael Kim playing some good golf, 55. Griffin. And then good to see Aaron Wise. Look, back and, took some time off from a mental standpoint. Didn't play in the Masters. And, let it be known, has won this tournament before. Anybody of interest to you there? Because I'm going to stop there because the next run of names is where I started loading up some bets.
Yeah, you and me both.
Okay.
There's two guys there that interested me. I wanted to learn more about Davis Riley, and I was high on Sung Jae Im last week at Quail Hollow, so I followed Sung Jae, who played with Davis the first couple days, and I think their third was Lucas Glover. So I walked a bunch of holes with those guys, and Davis Riley outdrives Lucas and Sung Jae by about 30 yards. Mm-hmm. I mean, I couldn't have been more impressed. And I couldn't figure out why he didn't show up there. And sometimes really good players, just a golf course doesn't suit their eye. But I don't think Davis should be that far off the radar. He's definitely on my radar for next week. I feel like I keep saying that. But I'm not sure that this is the best fit course either for him to go full on birdie fest. Now, Maverick McNeely is the type of guy who I'm much more interested in because you just got to make a lot of putts.
Yeah,
you got to make a lot of putts, and he's played well in Texas before. The grasses, the agronomy, those sorts of things, they suit his eye. He's definitely somebody who is comfortable in that climate. I know the ball striking could be better. I don't disagree with that. And last week I was very heavily leaning on a lot of great guys that were in great form. Sung Jae, Wyndham, Jordan, they had all been just really hitting the ball great. And this week I find myself in a totally different space where down at the ranch, I'm looking for guys that can really roll the rock in that like 10 to 15 foot range. And McNeely's one of those names that can do it. And you and I both know that.
Oh yeah. His strength, look, he's a putting machine. There's no question about it. I mean, he hasn't lost putting in a tournament probably since he was like 12 years old. I mean, he's an incredible putter. Why do I feel like McNeely towards the end of last year started tinkering a little bit? Why do I feel like he started tinkering a little bit here and there with the swing? And I don't know that for sure. I have a hunch and some resources that I don't know. It feels like it kind of gone the wrong way here a little bit from a ball striking standpoint. And his driver's a mess. However, big fairways there are going to help. His irons have not been good at all. But, to your point, he's going to make putt, or he's going to make some putts. So it sounds like, at least from that perspective, if you had to lean one way or the other, if you had to sacrifice a little bit of ball strike and get someone who can fill it up and make some putts, you would go that way versus it seems like every week I'm trying to convince myself, okay, give me the ball striker, give me looks, and maybe we'll just have a good putting week where it's not far-fetched to think this week, hey, go the other way. Get yourself someone who can fill it up, and let's see if they can figure it out and do enough from the ball striking standpoint.
You know what? I mean, you encapsulated like 80% of the weeks where it's give me the ball strikers and the putter will pop, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Tom Hoagies of the world and, guys of that nature. And then all of a sudden now we're saying just the opposite. But I think that this is definitely one of those places where if you are a great putter, you can differentiate yourself. You can really separate yourself. And with the width of the fairways, and let's be honest, every place is long. This is what, the 4th or 5th week in a row we played a golf course that's over 7,400 yards. It doesn't even matter to these guys.
No.
So I like McNeely around the greens. I love his pitching game. I love his putting game. He's a great scorer on par fives for that reason. I think he's just going to accumulate plenty of birdies as long as things aren't too far off.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
in that range, he's the one that interests me the most. I'll leave it at that.
There's no one really like popping, it feels like this week. That's just like jumping off the screen at you saying that you've got to bet him until you start to, at least in my eyes, so we start kind of getting down in here. I mean, Eric Cole's always a name that is popping up, and Stevens didn't perform last week. We talked a lot about him, but I'm going to stay with him again this week. I'll sprinkle a little on Stevens, and I've already sprinkled a little on Bezuidenhout. I really like Bezuidenhout this week. I think he's a good look approach. Guy that can make enough putts, just as you're talking about. He can do it.
Yeah, I love Stevens. There will be, like a Sunday, there'll be sprinkles all over that thing, man. I'm telling you, it's Stevens is definitely the prototype player for a situation like this in a week like this, which is a trap week where guys might be looking ahead and you're going to get someone down the odds board. Michael Kim was a name that you mentioned, but he's not as far down the board. Guys like that have really been, in a small sample, Sam Stevens has been really impressive. And he makes a lot of birdies. And he's number one in the field in opportunities gained, which I think is a measure on Fantasy National of like hitting it inside 15 feet. Yep. So when you start to say that, and the greens are 7,000 square feet, you say, well, this guy he's like Hoagie. He hits his quadrants. And therefore, because he's only an average putter statistically. So for that guy to make that many birdies, his proximity to the hole is elite. And he's definitely one of those guys that I feel strongly about that I want to work with this week for sure.
Yeah. So Stevens, so last 12 rounds, you look at approach. Last 12 rounds in this field approach, he's 5th. So you're looking at in the last 3 to 4 tournaments, this is one of the best ball strikers from an approach game. Now his putting is 77. Now let me go to my Bezuidenhout last 12 rounds. Bezuidenhout in his approach, 3rd. And he's 6th in putting. So you want someone who's you want someone who can come in and I know.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. Look at that's why you come to the Stripe Show, folks. This is the kind of stuff that we put out there. So we talk about approach and putting, right? And we weigh that out, and that's the 2 big ones. Well, you add those up over the last 12 rounds, no one's doing it better than Bezuidenhout. Small sample.
That makes perfect sense, though, because when you're talking about how wide these fairways are and the skill set that's really needed, which is this scoring ability that is unflappable, because those are the types of guys that in their practice rounds that make like 10 or 11 birdies. Now, do they make some bogeys and some doubles because they're obviously not ranked top 10 in the world, but those are the types of guys that you need on these TPC weeks, on these birdie fests. And I'm glad we had this conversation. Oh man, Travis, Stripe Show.
All right, here we go. Moving on here. That was kind of the mid part there that I was like, oh yeah, I'm back on Stevens. I like Bezuidenhout this week. There's Ben on, who I've been teasing a little bit over the last couple weeks. Shank, played pretty well last week at 65. Will Gordon at 70. Aaron Rise, we worked down the board. S.H. Kim. Nate Lashley's getting some looks this week at 80. Justin Suh is one of those guys. I think this place overall fits Justin Suh. I think his recent form scares me a little bit coming into this week. Jimmy Walker. I mean, the resurgence of Jimmy Walker is back, folks. I mean, he is there. He is back in Texas. Jimmy Walker, could this be the week? And then I'll stop at Dylan Wu. My man.
All right.
Dylan Wu. I've already played him.
I have a tough time when I'm on the range differentiating who's Nate Lashley and who's Matt Neesmith. But I figured it out last week because I saw a lot of both of them and they both played well. And Neesmith was playing with our man Wyndham the first couple rounds, so I got to see plenty of that game, which is impressive from a ball striking point of view. And Nate Lashley is the same way. I mean, par 5 scoring, proximity to the hole. This guy, much like Bezadenhout, he on approach, he's at that level that can give himself, a dozen legit birdie opportunities around. Mm-hmm. What worries me about Nate, but was good last week, was the putter to a certain degree. So I think of those guys that you talked about there, Nate the Great catches probably my attention the most, Travis.
Okay. Well, I think you're getting some good form with Nate with the putter right now. I think Dylan Wu is even more impressive when you look at recent form coming in at 90. So I think some things to think about for our audience. I went ahead and bet both Brandon and Dylan Wu this week. Now, Kenzie, what?
That's a double woo. I mean, I love that.
Yeah. First time ever.
Hey, Dylan Wu, right?
Maybe I'll get the Woo. Maybe I'll get the Woo Quinella.
Oh man,
Did you hit the race last week at all? Did you hit?
I did not.
No,
I did not. I did not hit the race. I only dabbled in it. It just on the road, and when you're chasing, as many players as you can see when I'm out there. I mean, The big thing for me about being on site, Travis, and you know this, and this is why we got connected, like as coaches, is that I want to see these guys play golf.
Yeah,
and that's why we find people that's why I find guys like Wyndham Clark all the time. I mean, when I see what he's doing live in action, and I'm following him along, and I see the way he carries himself and everything, it just really makes a difference as far as my handicapping goes. And Dylan Wu right now is one of those guys that is a prolific birdie machine, and in this field, he's top 3. Mm-hmm. And it comes from the par 5 scoring, but also, I mentioned this earlier. When Jordan Spieth went nuts, it seemed like every 10 to 20 foot putt that he looked at, he made it like it was a 5-footer. And that's what Dylan Wu's doing right now, which makes me a believer, and especially at different books have different things, but you're talking around, 125 to 1, somewhere in that ballpark. And the fact that he can make that many birdies, to me, just screams like TPC Lee all over again. And, he's number 1 in the field for cashing in on birdie putts from 10 to 15 feet. Wow. Now, I think it's important to note, I keep talking about the putting, and the reason is that of all the 5-foot brackets, from 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, so on and so forth, the makes at TPC Craig Ranch are above tour average. So it's one of those things where there's not a lot of tricks to this. You have to be a good putter, of which most people are average. And if you are, then at the end of the day, then that's how you differentiate yourself here. Now, guys can get hot, but I love Dylan Wu because he's proven that he can just score, and we know we need scoring. I mean, how do you justify anyone else but picking guys that could really score this week? Just like last week, we had to pick really good ball strikers. I mean, it's just this is the template we're given.
Yeah, and I just get the feeling that Dylan Wu, second year on tour, you're just seeing the growth right now that you would hope to see from a rookie to a second-year player. I mean, you're seeing someone who just has a lot more confidence out there. I mean, second time around on some of these golf courses, he did miss the cut here last year, but you look at his first year on tour and how many cuts he missed, and just how he played versus what's happening this year. I mean, he hasn't missed a cut since January. I mean, this is a guy that's making every cut and finishing pretty much inside top 35 every single week. 21st at Wells Fargo. He's got to feel great about the way he played last week. I mean, +6 putting, +3.5 in an elevated event. I mean, he's got to be coming in here this week, on a golf course like this that I think kind of fits what he does. And like, man, I got a chance to win this week. I mean, I know Scotty's here. I get it. If Scheffler goes out and he makes everything, we're probably going to get whipped. But if he doesn't, and he kind of is looking ahead, and Hatton's looking ahead, and there's that opportunity for me to get in the final group or last pager on Sunday, I would not be surprised to see him perhaps jump up there and we get a 90 to 101 to win this thing. So yeah, I'm big on Dylan this week. I like both woos. We'll see. Now we start getting into the hundreds, and stop me at a name that may have interest to you. Hughes, Davis Thompson, Higo, MJ, Molineux, Harry Hall, Cameron Champ, Robbie Shelton, Ryan Palmer. Ryan Palmer back in Texas. You can stop there.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. You
That's
said stop me, right?
Okay.
Well,
yep.
I'm not 100% there yet. I mean, it's Tuesday. I settle things down on a Wednesday, but as we go down this part of the list, you need to do something for me. And Ryan Palmer is definitely a guy that last week he showed it. He's been struggling. He's got a lot of miscuts. He's got a lot of red on that strokes gained board. There's no doubt about that. Back in Texas, good history in this tournament, good history on this golf course. Ryan Palmer, probably by the time he goes off on Wednesday, he'll be in the high 100s. So he's definitely one of those guys that he'll be a great DraftKings value for sure.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
With the way that he played last week, gives you all the reason in the world. There's no doubt about that.
All right, Luke List, Vincent Norman, Naismith starting to dig himself out a little bit. Kind of lost his ball striking there. I think it's on its way back. Pearson Cootie, South Pearson Cootie, maybe that's Southern Kid. Patton Kazire, Tyler Duncan, Sig, Gim, and it wouldn't be a Tuesday without stopping at Austin Smotherman at 180 to 1. It wouldn't be a Tuesday, folks, if we didn't stop there and give Austin Smotherman his due diligence and try to just convince you to sprinkle a little on him, because we know he's got a high ceiling. But I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it this week. David Lipsky, Hoffman, EVR, Hickok. You could convince me of Novak. You could convince me to sprinkle a little there on Novak. I think he makes the cut here. I think I could throw a top 20 on Andrew Novak, Eckroat, Adam Long, Carl Yuan, David Micheluzzi in the 250 to 1. I'll tell you, I'll go all the way down. If I had to, hey, give me a bomb this week, AT&T, but I got a little money to spend. Give me a bomb. I want to sweat.
How about Chad Ramey?
I'll go Chesson Hadley.
Oh, you know what? I talked to Chesson last week.
That's my guy.
On Wednesday night. So on Wednesday night, I had this really fortunate opportunity. I go to this Peter Millar store opening, whatever thing in Charlotte. I don't know. Rubbing elbows with sweater vests and stuff,
with
right?
The Chesson Hadleys of the world. Yep.
So Chesson Hadley's there, right? And I coach a kid that went to Georgia Tech. Chesson Hadley went to Georgia Tech. So I wanted to talk to him about, their facility there and how nice it is, and how the player that I had there, his name's Will Dixon. When he went there, he said, all the alumni, the tour players are really good to him and everything. So I'd never met Chesson Hadley before. So I started talking to him, and I just said, hey, man, I think what you do for these young kids, mentoring them, I think is really a special thing. And Chesson Hadley couldn't have been nicer. He talked to me for about 10 minutes. He says, I said, how do you feel about your game lately? If I'm allowed to ask that, right? And but was not on the course property, right? So I said, how do you feel about your game? He says, man, he goes, I've been searching for a while, but the last month I found it. It's just a matter of time before things get better. Yep. And he had some good and some bad at Quail. It wasn't great, but he had some good and some bad there. But that's a guy that can putt. And he's definitely one of those guys. And the other guy who can definitely roll the rock is Chad Ramey. We've seen it happen a couple times. First round leader. What's to say that he can't carry that through a couple more rounds on a little bit of an easier golf course where birdies are the number one priority? I mean, we're talking about an event where you just sit with your foot on the gas the whole time. Some people they're not comfortable driving 200 miles an hour, and, not everyone's a jockey ready to ride, a Triple Crown winner. You know what I mean? Some people like to go slow in this world and plod, but we need a guy who can put his foot to the gas, and either one of those two, at least I got positive vibes from Chesson, who's a great guy.
Oh yeah. Chesson, and you could, in Ramey, I don't know if he's kind of more of I'd like to see a little more probably tree line with Ramey, but Chesson's a guy that will show up and go unconscious positive 9 putting. I mean, it doesn't matter what happens before. And I think he's kind of he likes to ride the wave. Okay, I'm finding something. I find it in my swing, and then he goes blitzed with the putter, and all of a sudden he's there. Speaking of 75-1 long shots, I remember when he finished second at Palmetto to my boy Higo. I had at 75-1 when he came over from the DP World Tour, and we hit that one. But Palmetto going into that week back in 2020, he missed 4 straight cuts. And all of a sudden he's there, finishes second to Higo, and makes positive 9.3 putting. Just 5 tournaments before that, he was positive 9. I mean, you just go through his career, just back at the Phoenix Open, he was positive 8.6, positive 6 at the Honda. I mean, this dude can blitz it with the putter. And he's done it he's done it in Texas before. And so here's my theory. At 300-1, right? He shows up this week in Texas and he goes positive 7, makes everything he looks at. And his iron game has been pretty good. Hasn't been bad, It hadn't been bad the last 6 or 7 weeks. So, all right, you want a bomber? That's my boy Hadley at 300.
Hey, you could get him plus 550. FanDuel.
There you go.
We're going to go deep.
I'm going FanDuel right now. I'm going to go FanDuel 550. Look, if we hit that, I'm going to fly you to Vegas and meet you there. And we'll do the show next week from Vegas on Tuesday.
Hey, have clubs will travel. It doesn't take much of a sprinkle at 550-1 to make it count. That's for sure.
Kevin Roy is the other one. Kevin Roy is the other one that I think is getting a little interest in a guy that can hit it and has some firepower at 300. I mean, I think if you had to sprinkle a little there, that probably wouldn't go too bad either.
Kevin Roy is a guy I've been just using at the bottom of the board in DraftKings, and I've been very happy with. Because he makes a ton of birdies. And I mean, if anyone's listening to this and they get 1 point out of everything that we've discussed today, from a golfer's, like a golf geek's point of view, if you can't get that putter to pop to an 8 or a 9 this week on strokes gained, which is making a lot of putts, it's not going to happen because that's what needs to happen. I mean, there's only probably 5 guys in the field that can ball strike it well enough, like a Hatton, Scheffler, or Hoagie, that can gain enough on approach that can let the putter be 2 or 3, right? I mean, we saw it with Scotty when he boat raced the field at the Players. He was plus 0.1 with the putter, and he won by whatever he wanted to win by, right? So when you get a guy down there bottom of the board, I mean, literally, like to quote Brooks Koepka, there's only a couple guys that can do what I can do. Well, you got to look for those guys that can gain that much with the putter. And Hadley's a great point. He's a great point, and he feels good about his game, so even better.
I'm in. All right. I might go over to FanDuel and put a little more on him. 500. There he is, folks. Keith Stewart, he's back. We're going for 2 for 2 this week. Go follow him. At Read the Line, my man. Great work as always.
Travis, as a PGA pro, I always say this. There's nothing better than being on a Stripe show.